Thank you. It's lovely to see so many of you here. Some of you made a real effort to be here. I was chatting to someone earlier who's come all the way from Cardiff. They've travelled 150 miles to be here. Hands up, someone came down from Scotland. They've travelled 400 miles to be here. It's pretty good. And there's been someone from the Isle of Wight who's travelled from the 1970s to join us today. Welcome. I'm not getting invited back there to do this talk, am I? So, for those of you who don't know me, 14 years ago I set up an accountancy practice because I just felt small businesses deserve more from their accountants. And we've evolved into the agency specialists with 450 clients across the UK. And I've just got the coolest job, literally the coolest job. I absolutely adore what I do because I get to work with you guys every day. I get to hang out with you, interview you, and I get to see what the top performing agencies are doing here in the UK. And I've always been fascinated about the difference, actually, about the difference between the ones that really make it big and those that just tick along or find it a challenge. And I've kind of made it my mission to share with you those differences, share with you what the top performing agencies are doing, and that's what I'll be doing today. But it's not just insight from my work over the last 14 years, it's insights from this, our agency survey. It's called Bench Press. It was something that we started off as a one-off thing 6 years ago. Like all great one-off things, it just kind of grows and gets out of control. And it's now the largest survey of independent agencies in the UK. Quick show of hands, how many people here have completed this year's survey already? Okay, amazing, half of you. The other half, I'm going to explain why at the end. It's really important that you take part. But for now, if you just jot down or scribble on your phones or just remember, benchpress.uk.com. It's a fantastic tool. And this year we moved away from, we will be producing a static report, but by taking part, you'll be able to log back in later in the year and do live benchmarking against your peers. Absolutely stunning tool that we've created, so I'm really excited about that. So lots of insights from that. Now, in terms of today, just a couple of things. It's a really reasonable question to ask, why bother to benchmark? Everyone's here is interested in it, interested enough to give up your evenings to come and listen to this talk. But why bother? And I guess the reason why we're so passionate about benchmarking is probably best illustrated by a conversation I had probably about 3 years ago. And it was an awards dinner. And it was at about midnight. And it was just outside, you know those photo booths that you have? And so I had a beer in my hand and someone stumbled out of the photo booth dressed as Elton John and partly Dame Edna Everage. It was hard to tell who he actually was. And he said, you're Pete. Can I buy you a beer? I said, sure. I rarely turn down free beers. I'd love to have another free beer. And we chatted at the bar. He said, look, I wanted to buy you a beer. I just wanted to thank you. And the reason he wanted to thank me was because he'd read one of our benchmarking reports a couple of years earlier. And he spotted he was in the bottom 25% for a particular stat. And he didn't like it. And he said to himself, hang on a minute, I'm not a bottom 25% person. I'm not a bottom 25% agency. Our work isn't bottom 25%. And that stat inspired him. He set about a process of change. He went on a journey to watch some of the videos that we've done. He went on a journey to read up about how he can grow his agency, how he can increase his profitability, how he can do it more sustainably. And it took him on a journey. So without even speaking to him, that one benchmark galvanized him into action, inspired him into action. And I hope that there'll be something here today that will inspire you into action in your agencies. And then you can buy me a beer. And that's basically why I'm here. So the other point is, this is really important. All the information I'm sharing, all the data I'm sharing is really raw, it's really fresh. It's not going to be published until the 22nd of March. The survey's still open, it's still live. These results might change, well, will change ever so slightly. Statistically now, we're up to nearly 400 that have taken part, so they won't alter too much. But there may be subtle differences. We'll do the final calculations right at the last minute. So please, you're the only people in the world who are seeing this stuff. You're more than welcome to take pictures for your own use, but please keep it under your hat. So if you want to tweet, please feel free to say nice stuff, because my mum reads all the tweets. But in terms of pictures of the stats, top secret, guys. You're in a privileged position, so I hope you enjoy it. Hopefully this is just the start of your journey. This isn't just about me just sharing some numbers with you, you writing them down and disappearing off. I sincerely hope this is the start of a journey that will take you to a better place for agency, help you build a business that really, really works for you. So, some headlines from this year's report. Confidence is high amongst agencies, really high. And we asked this question. We asked you to rate your confidence out of 100. And the rules we said was, look, anything less than 50, and you think this year is going to be worse than last year. Anything more than 50, and you're expecting this year to be better than last year. So, only 5% of agencies are expecting this year, 2018, to be worse than last year. Only 5%. A large chunk of agencies are pretty chipper, give scores in the 60s, 70s, and 80s about their prospects for the year. And then there's these guys who I have no idea what's in their beer fridges, but I want some. Because 32% of agencies are giving them reckon this year is going to be in the 90s or even 100. Confidence is really high, and that's reflected when I asked the question, give me your predictions for revenue growth for the next 12 months. Only 11% of agencies reckon that things will stay the same or reduce. Everyone else is expecting growth. 2/3, 67%, are expecting double-digit growth this year. Double-digit growth, 67%, 2/3 expecting double-digit growth. Confidence is high, but beware. Because there's a thing about targets is that, well, they're just targets. And actual performance, every year we do this, always reflects very differently. 82% of agencies actually missed their growth targets. Too many beer fridges, guys. 90% were expecting to grow last year. Only 74% actually managed it. So confidence is high, but it's not necessarily reflected in the results. However, when you add it all up, overall, agencies are thriving, absolutely thriving. When you look at the data, when you look at the actual results, you guys are doing tremendously well. 68% grew by more than 5%. A third grew by more than 25%. This is a thriving industry, and you're all part of it. So hats off to you. Now, I'm talking about benchmarks today, and there's lots of stuff you can measure in your agencies, and I want to really get you thinking about what success looks like. In fact, I want to go beyond that. I want to help you redefine what success looks like in your agencies. And I thought long and hard about this. About, crikey, where on earth do I start? There's so much stuff. But I think, honestly, there is only one thing that matters, and that's you. It's what you each want. And I want you to think about that very carefully. I want you to think about what you each want from your agency. I want you to think about why you're doing this, why you set up your agency in the first place, why you're doing it now. And the reason I want you to think about this specifically now is because I see so many agencies who've been going a little while forget their purpose. You know, when you chucked in your job, you all remember the day you handed in your job, you left the big corporate, there'd be many reasons why you did that. So probably freedom, probably no more timesheets. Anyone here? Yeah, that comes round, doesn't it? But you wanted to do things your way, set your own path, beat your own drum. And I want you to think about how much of that still applies today. Because I see a lot of agencies falling into this trap. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years on, 5 years on. Suddenly, that seems a distant dream. All of a sudden, the agency's telling you what to do. It's telling you what clients to pick up. It's telling you what time you should come to work and what time you should go home. It's telling you the sort of work you should be doing, how you should be spending your time. The dreams of more creative freedom or whatever it is you wanted to do seem a distant memory. I would love for you, I see a few people nodding heads, I'd love for you to reconnect with that purpose right now. Think about it. Why are you doing this? What is it that you're trying to achieve? What is the purpose of your business? And a lot of agencies think about, will say, look, well, I need to build it to this point, and I'm going to grow it, and I'm going to sell it. And if that's your objective, then that's awesome. We help a load of clients do that. But only 5% of agencies actually achieve a meaningful exit. Only 5%. 1 in 20. I don't fancy those odds. You're way more likely to fail, way more likely to go bust than you are to sell your agency. So I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine if you couldn't retire in your business. You literally had to work until the day you died, had to work in your agency until the day. You couldn't retire, you couldn't sell it, you had to work till the day you died. What would change in your business? What would you do differently? What clients would you no longer work with? What staff would you say goodbye to? What habits would you change? How would you change the way you approached your time? Who might you hire? Who might you fire? Think about that for a second. Imagine if you couldn't retire. What would your business, what would need to change in your business? And if stuff's cropping to mind, like there's clues there, guys. There's clues that will help you reconnect with your purpose and build an agency that really matters to you, that allows you to do what you want to do and really fires you up. Now, ultimately, what I'm here to help you do, whatever it is that you want to achieve, I think it's a whole lot easier if you're building a profitable and sustainable agency. That's my mission in life. That's what I help you do. And that's what some tips I'll share today will give you. In terms of measuring performance, I like to start in one particular place, which is at the bottom. A lot of agencies start at the top. They'll say, I want this level of revenue growth this year. We saw that stat earlier. I want to turn over this. And you'll hear people proudly talk about it. I've grown by this percentage this year. I've grown by that. I've hired this many members of staff. Terrific. But I want to suggest you start somewhere else. Start at the bottom. Start with profit. In fact, put profit first. Think about how much profit you want to make this year and work back from that. Say, well, if I want to make this amount of profit, then with these overheads, I'm going to need these projects, these 20 of those, 10 of them, and 5 of them. Okay. There's my year, and if I keep to that, then I achieve that thing at the bottom. Start at the bottom, work your way up, not at the top and down. And in fact, profit can be a bit misleading. I mean, we've done stats on this before. What's your average net profit for agencies? And it's really misleading for 2 reasons. Number one, the range size of agency that complete the report varies between startup and 10 million. You know, most of the clients we work with tend to be $250,000 and 5 million, so there's definitely a group in that section. But there's a big range. A £3 million agency has very, very different overheads to a £500,000 agency. And it gets harder to make that net profit percentage as you get bigger, because all of a sudden you've got bigger office space, you've got HR resource, you've got IT resource, you've got marketing resource, you've got overheads, non-chargeable overheads that you didn't have when you were smaller. It gets a lot harder. So just to say the average in the UK is 18%, doesn't tell the whole story. And I'll tell you why it's also misleading. So we did a little report last year, which what does the average UK in the agency look like? So the average agency in the UK look like? And the answer was £1 million turnover, 18% net profit. Now, £180,000 net profit is a really good income if you're the sole director. Really good income. After tax, you'd be pretty happy with that. It's not quite so good if there's 4 of you to share that amongst. And that's the thing about net profit. Often the way we pay ourselves is we take out the dividends out of that net profit figure. So I think a much better stat to measure yourself against is the one that Daniel alluded to earlier, which is how much agency owners get paid. And I thought I'd share with you that exact figure. So here they are. We asked, out come the camera phones, click, click, click. Who are the bastards earning 10 grand a month or more? Right, so this is how much agency owners draw from their business each month. 5% draw nothing right now. At the bottom end, at 11%, are drawing more than 10 grand a month. And that's where I guess you need to be elite. There's a big group, a third, sit between £2,000 and £4,000 a month in drawings. Have a think about where you are on that chart. Have a think about where you would like to be this time next year. This is it, guys. This is where we start. Start with this, then work out the profit you need to make, then work out everything else. This is where the planning starts, not with turnover. And once you've done that and you're going through this process, you're going to need to start asking questions like, well, what's my billing capacity? And here's how to work it out. So you take your day rate, you times it by the number of people in your team, by the days in a month, 21 days typically in a month, and that gives you your billing capacity. And your billing capacity is when at full tilt, if everyone's operating at full capacity in the month, how much could we bill? Now, a couple of nuances to this, that if you have tiered day rates, you're going to need a spreadsheet. You're going to need to have your people with all the different day rates. If those people are partly chargeable and partly not chargeable, you need a third column, which says what percentage they're chargeable. And then you can work out your billing capacity as a team. Now, What I then want you to do is this. I want you to go back and look at your management accounts for the last 12 months. And if that's your billing capacity, I want you to look at what you actually build. And there'll be a gap, and there'll be a big gap. And I want you to get curious about why that gap exists. Where's all that going? Because I bet if I walked into your offices tomorrow, everyone's busy, right? Everyone's flat out working late. They're not sat around twiddling their thumbs. And yet, billing capacity says there, actual says there. Where's it going? Well, one place it often goes is in utilizing resource and scheduling resource properly. I see so many agencies winging it. And do you know what? Like, that's fine in the early days, but you can't wing it if you were serious about building something profitable and sustainable. You need to think very carefully about how you schedule resource. And there's a great tool out there that will help you do it. It's called Resource Guru. I'm sure some of you here will use it. And they provided some really interesting stats on utilization rates. 68% is the average utilization rate for agencies. That's the amount of time that is booked in the system in Resource Guru. 92% of that time is billable, which means that 63% of staff's time is being billed. So if you were doing that calculation and you were thinking, gosh, my billing capacity is £100,000, but I'm hovering around the £65,000 point, you're very typical. You're very typical. A lot of agencies aim for 75. You know, you'll never get to 100. You don't want to get to 100. You know, we're not machines. Yeah, you have a question?
Sorry. Does that include non-billable staff at 63%, or is that just billable staff?
Billable staff. Billable staff. So of your billable staff time, on average, and this is a big sample size, several hundred, 63% on average is actually being billed out to clients, which is why there's that gap. Now, I want you to get curious about how to close that gap. And it will take you on a journey, a really exciting journey. It will take you, it will force you to look at the time you spend scoping, the time you spend, how you manage projects. It will force you to look at things like scope creep, like the dreaded scope creep. No one has really cracked it. We're an accountancy practice. We swap time for money as well. We haven't cracked it either. But I promise you, we spend a lot of time thinking about it, and the top-performing agencies do as well. Here's some tips that I've seen the top-performing agencies doing. So first of all, they're masters at scoping things out before they start work, okay? So they will think very carefully about whether or not they're going to pitch for something or issue a proposal for a piece of work. And they will use a scoring system. So they will ask a series of questions that will determine a score that will allow them to decide, A, whether to pitch or not, but also, B, how much resource to put into this. Because this is the other thing when it comes to scheduling resource. I see so many agencies will schedule projects down to the nth degree and just forget about pitching. Like, what's your budget for pitching each month, pitching resource? Or does the sales guy come in and suddenly all heads are turned because it's an exciting pitch and all of those projects slip? See that happen, and a few of you smirking, so it's happening in your business. Yeah, that's not a smirk, that's a shame. God. Yeah, like a balloon deflating, sorry. So, and a really good trick that an agency taught me that I'm just going to share with you. So this is an agency up in Leeds, 20-person agency, and they got suddenly very, very good at qualifying, really good at qualifying. And the reason is they got very good at getting the answers that perhaps other agencies aren't quite so good at, that we're not quite so good at. And they asked a series of questions. So first of all, they said, is there a pitch fee for this? And when the client invariably said no, they said, oh, well, we don't normally pitch for free. However, I'd love to work with you. You know, I'll be honest, I've got a few ideas, and I think it would be awesome to give this a go. But to allow me to do that, I've got to take time out of the studio. And our FD, well, he won't let me do it unless I've got a bit more information. Can you help me with this? I wonder if I could ask you a couple of questions. And so, by the way, if you don't have an FD, make one up. Everyone assumes FDs are bastards, so they will naturally go along with your story. So what you can do is say, I've got some questions. So first of all, how many people are being invited to pitch? Who are they? Any of them incumbents? Any incumbent agencies? How will you be choosing who you're going to go with? What's the pitch process? What are the criteria? Who's involved in that process? What are the timescales? What is the budget? Oh, we don't have a budget. Heard that one before? Everyone has a budget. Here's how to tease it out of them. say, well, we tend to work in 3 areas. We work on websites between 50 and 100 grand, between 10 and 50 grand, and between 5 and 10 grand. Which category do you think you go in? And come up with your own little categories. They can't help but pick one. Everyone's got a budget. Just try it. Say which of these 3 roughly is the closest, because so we can match to your requirements. They will tell you, oh well, not that one. You did have a budget. So ask those questions. Again, we can't do anything. We can't release the resource until we get this information for our FD. And then just have the conversation up front about scoping. So I went to a dinner the other day and sat next to an incredible guy. His name's Peter. He runs a 120-person agency. They're a media buying agency. He started his business in 1979. This business has seen everything. He's seen everything, and he's gone through all the highs and lows, as you can imagine. And he had a great phrase. He said, look, he sits down with his clients right at the outset and says, how would you like to handle the situation where there's scope creep? And of course, no client turns around and says, well, I'd like you to do that for free, please. By the way, if they do, you know exactly what to do with them. So invariably, there's a nice, frank conversation about how you handle that, and it's agreed up front at the outset. And that avoids a situation where you're having that conversation 48 hours before a deadline, when you're stressed, they're stressed, everyone's stressed, and then you can't have the conversation about cost, and you just end up doing it. So he has that conversation up front and says, how do you want to handle it? Well, we'll charge extra for it. We'll agree a scope of work, and it'll get signed off in this way. And who has authority your end to sign it off? Who has authority to make these extra requests? How do you want to handle it? I think it's a really smart move. By the way, the other great question that he told me that he asked is it your intention to pay me on time? Great question, isn't it? Write it down. Is it your intention to pay me on time? Of course, everyone says, yeah, of course it's my intention. Great. Would it be okay if you put in penalty clauses if you didn't pay on time? This guy does it. He works with some big organizations. And because do you know what? He's been through so much in the last 38 years that he knows to ask that question, and he knows how to deal with it. This is a really good tip. So contingency budget. I see more and more agencies doing this. Because let's be honest, we don't live in a fixed world. Things change. Projects change. And get halfway through and quarter way through, someone wants something new. Someone wants something different. So I see more and more agencies saying, can you sign off a contingency budget? Around about 20%, more than this project fee, for extras. Probably won't use it. But it's really important it's there. So if these extra requests crop up, then we can add it in. It just takes the hassle away. We won't start the project until you've got this signed off. And we'll be really transparent about it, but it's important. It just takes the stress away from it all. And having sign off at each stage, again, another great tip I picked up from a client. I went into their offices, and they'd gone from being really bad at this to really good at this. They used electronic document signing to just very simply send a one-page through. The design phase is now complete. We've now completed this. Any amendments beyond this point will be chargeable. Signed by the client. Done. Takes seconds. Really, really good tip. Final tip I just want to share is this is a team game, right? What you decide here to do today is the tip of the iceberg. It's what goes on in your offices tomorrow with your teams that determines whether you make profit or not. It determines how much time is wasted. Now, if one of your team tonight borrowed the company credit card and spent £1,000 in a bar, you'd be pretty pissed off, right? You'd haul them in and you'd want to know why they spent £1,000 of your money in a bar. And yet tomorrow, in our businesses, our members of the team will be spending £1,000 of our money in the time, giving their time away, and we turn a blind eye. It's time to stop turning a blind eye. It's time to educate our teams and help them understand this whole game, what scope creep means. Help them understand project milestones and how it's aligned with cash flow. Help them understand this stuff. And once they understand it, watch how their behavior changes. And if you need any helping hands, reminding them about what's important, I can lend you someone, right? We have someone at WOW called Terry. Now, Terry is available for hire. I've got a clip of him in action. He's really good at reminding people about doing the job properly. Here's Terry.
When we asked Reebok to send us Terry Tate, some people thought we were crazy. But I'm a firm believer in paradigm breaking, outside-the-box thinking.
Hey, buddy.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
And since Terry's been with us, our productivity has gone up 46%. We're getting more from our employees than ever before.
You know you need a cover sheet on your TPS reports, Richard! That ain't new, baby!
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Janice!
But what's really impressed me is how Terry's become part of the Felcher family.
You can't hide, baby.
He fits right in here.
That's a long-distance call, Doug.
To be honest, I wish Reebok sent us 10 Terry Tates.
You want to play games, Gene? Well, when it's game time, it's pay time, baby. Woo!
Oh, that solitaire makes me feel so nostalgic. And also gives away how long I've been using that video for. Something else that's going to make a huge difference to your profitability is the price that you charge. I know a lot of you are keen to hear what the average price that agency charges here in the UK, and I'll share that in a second. I also want to share a little bit of information about how agencies price for jobs, because it's quite nuanced. So we asked the question, you can only pick one answer, by the way, in this. And we said, look, which one of these do you use to price your jobs most often? And we had fixed, agile, time and materials, performance, and licensing. So these top two have an element of fixed in them. So 77% of agencies have an element of fixed pricing in them. Now, with fixed pricing comes huge opportunities. It comes the opportunity for value pricing. So this is what we're going to do, and it's down to us to deliver it efficiently, and that's where the big opportunities for profit come. However, that's where the big opportunities for disaster also. I know agencies who've won their biggest contracts yet. We've just won a 100 grand deal, and they've gone bust in 9 months because it's crippled them. They got it wrong. They had a fixed price, and they didn't deliver on it properly. They didn't scope it properly, didn't deliver on it properly. So pricing is one thing. It's about how you deliver it. But that's intriguing. So there's a shift, a trend. That was 45% last year. So more and more agencies are moving to fixed pricing as they attempt to move to selling value, not time, yeah.
Can you just expand on what agile is?
So as we defined it in the survey, agile meant a flexible initial working period where you're almost operating on time and materials, and then you go into a fixed period. That's how we defined it. Time and materials is literally you bill for your time, no matter what. Like if we do 100 hours, we bill 100 hours at this price. It's all pre-agreed. Performance is, well, we're not going to charge you for a time, but if whatever we've created does well, then we'll get paid based on some performance metric and then licensing. So obviously, and I'm sure all of you will have tried elements of all of these, but we asked which do you do most often. We also asked a question about whether agencies had blended or tiered rates. So a blended rate, nice and simple. We charge everyone out at this flat rate. And most people do, which surprises me because it's not that simple, you know? Very quickly, once you start hiring people, you're going to get different tiers of expertise. And I see so many agencies missing opportunities to charge premium pricing for that premium tier of expertise. So what tends to happen is you start off with a blended rate. Well, it's me and a couple of mates, so we're all roughly the same level. We'll charge ourselves out at this. And then you hire a few people, and suddenly you've got juniors and seniors, and it makes sense to move to tiered pricing. But just have a think about your business. If you're currently on a blended rate, you've got juniors there, right? And what often will happen is you'll just drag your hourly rate down to the lowest price, to the lowest cost, or nearer the lowest cost, instead of saying, well, actually, oh, hang on, I'm the premium. I should be charging myself out more, and I've got 2 or 3 other seniors, so I should charge myself out more. I'd encourage you to think about that and look at that. Now, the average hourly rate in UK agencies, we used to publish this as a single figure. We've gone beyond that this year. Thanks to the fact that so many people have taken part, we can do more analysis. So we split it into director, senior, mid-level, and junior. And we split the results into what the bottom 25% charge, what the average is, and what the top 25% charge. Okay, I'm just going to let you dwell on that for a second, but then I'm going to do this. Because no one here wants to be average. And I'm pretty sure no one wants to be in the bottom 25%. And by the way, if you want those stats, you'll have to wait till the report comes out. This is where we need to be focusing on, guys. The top 25% of agencies here in the UK are charging the directors out at £130 an hour. Their seniors at £100 an hour. Mid-levels at 90 and juniors at 80. They are not charging less than £80 an hour. The top 25% of agencies. This isn't the top 10%. This is a big chunk, 25%. You don't want to be in the bottom 25. You sure as hell don't want to be average. No one wants to be average. This is where we need to head. Have a think about what you need to do to get there.
Also, can I just say that, Pete? Because that's a question I ask quite a lot of people, and some rates that I've come across have been between 1,600 and 2,000 for most senior staff, right? So there's clients out there that are willing to pay for this. Obviously, we're not all in the room here going to, go for all those clients at once because there's not that many clients out there to be able to pay that. But it just gives you an idea at what point you can push it up to and still be competitive in the market ultimately. The other point on that is, if you look at consultancies, McKinsey, all these, Accenture, I mean, some of them charge like $4 grand a day, right? And even more upwards.
Yeah, minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum $4 grand a day.
So on that, how does that compare across different industries? Because we work across lots of different industries right here. So we work in hospitality, which is quite a low margin industry, and our rates are not anywhere near that.
So my dream for the benchmarking report is that eventually we'll get enough people to take part that I'll be able to do that analysis. So for any stat I put up here has to have a minimum sample size of 100. We get roughly 500 agencies taking part in this survey. To do that detailed analysis, I'd need to have 100 in the hospitality industry. That is where I want to be. In fact, where I want to be is give you the ability to log in, which is coming later this year, and you to go, right, I only want to compare myself to people in my industry, or people who do the particular work that I do, or people, agencies on the Isle of Wight, where of course there's many. God, I'm giving them such a hard time. So,
Pete, can I just add at this point that your first benchmarking study that you shared with us encouraged me to up my day rate by £200 a day the next day, and no one blinked an eye.
amazing.
And I met someone from Conja today, Chris, who just said, keep raising it until they say stop.
Yep.
And you know what? It's just do it. And if they say stop, you can stop for that client. But it made it a significant impact for us just based on what you told us that first time.
But what about geographically? Do you find there's a big difference? I mean, I talked to a PR agency in London, and he was saying, we're about 150 to 250 pounds an hour. I was thinking, you but then again, I think that's fairly typical.
Yeah,
which we can't get up to at mistake.
So roughly, well, you can just stick a London office on your on your website. So roughly, so I haven't got the exact stats. I haven't got the exact stats from this year, but you would historically that figure's say being 140 in London, 120 elsewhere. I remember doing that little difference. So but there is definitely a weighting for London. So I talked about building profitable and sustainable agencies. This will help retainers. 81, no surprise here, 81% of agencies are looking for more retainers in 2018. But let's actually have a look at what percentage of revenue is actually retained. So we asked that question. What of your monthly revenue, what percentage is retained? Well, 1 in 5 don't have any retainers. 1 in 5 don't have any retainers. And then we've got a heap of answers. I'll let you just kind of digest that and think about where you sit on that. And, well, 4 out of 5 of you are looking for more of them. So it's a really interesting discussion to have with each other maybe afterwards. How do you bring on retainers in your business, and how have you increased them? The other thing about retainers, I've got some more stats on retainers. So this is a completely useless stat. Retainer values. So we've got a business analyst called Tom who helps me put this stuff together. And he gave me that, and I just thought I'd put it up. Thanks, Tom. No, he's amazing. But to be fair, I put this in. So between £100 and £100 grand a month. A more useful stat is £1,800 a month. That's way more useful. That's the average. But again, I don't want to be average. I want to be in the top 25%. This is what the top 25% of agencies are doing. Their minimum, they will not get out of bed for less than £2 grand a month retainer. The average is around £4 grand, and their biggest is 10 grand. That's what the top performing agencies are doing when it comes to retainers. I'll let you just quickly take your photos. I assume it's the screen and not me. Such a shame. Right. Projects. Well, similar questions around projects. Another useless stat. The average project, the projects ranged between 50 and $1 million. So here's an interesting stat. In our benchmarking report, I will reveal What percentage of agencies have won £1 million contracts? I'll reveal that in the report. So that's really quite exciting. So the average is 10K. That's the average project value for agencies across the board. Again, top 25%. They won't get out of bed for less than 10 grand. It's just not worth it. The average project value is around about 33, and their biggest project is 150. Now, I did some deeper analysis with the help of Tom, our business analyst, and we looked at the traits of the top 10% by profitability. So we looked at a huge sample size, 500 agencies. We said, let's look at the most profitable, and let's look at what these guys do. And there were three things that stood out dramatically. The first one was this. Nearly 2/3 had won projects in excess of £250,000 versus 19% average. So all of the agencies in the UK, 19% have won a project in excess of £250,000. But amongst the top most profitable, that figure skyrockets. And it's probably best illustrated by a conversation I had with one of our clients. They're a 40-person agency, and they'd been on this journey. So they're based down the M3 corridor. They've been on this journey from working with local business, doing local websites for local people, to this incredible business working on huge projects in the UX space. And what the MD told me, he said, look, Pete, it's simple. He said, a £250,000 project isn't 25 times the amount of work than a 10 grand project. And you suddenly think about it and go, no, it isn't. So the bigger the project, all other things being equal, you need to manage it properly, scope it properly, the more profit that you make. And we see that time and time again with agencies. So 60% had a minimum project value of greater than 10 grand versus 22% average. So again, they're not bothered with the low projects. They say no to stuff, and they move further and further up the tree. And again, this is a journey. So wherever you're at, in terms of your pricing, your project value, I'd challenge you to go one step higher tomorrow and see what happens. I promise you, good things will. And the third thing is they all track time. They all track time in their agencies so they could analyze their profitability. Now, tracking time just got a lot easier. For those of you who don't track time and use Xero, you can now track time in your accounting software. So this is brand new for 2018. And again, if you're not tracking time already and you have Xero, you can click a button and start doing it. It's really worth checking out. The holy grail is live project profitability reporting. Pretty much every agency that we go into at WOW, we ask them this question, show me your project reporting. And a lot of them will proudly dig up some reports. They show us retrospectively. Here's how we got on for these last 5 projects. I don't want to know how you got on. I want to know how you're getting on right now, weekly. And there's a shift happens in top agencies by profitability, is they suddenly go from, they go from, first of all, doing it at the end of the project to doing it during the project. But instead of sending it out via email, just as a spreadsheet, they haul the account managers and the directors in for a meeting weekly. And they talk about profitability and milestones in the project. And trust me, you don't want to be an account manager or director being hauled into one of those meetings and have your project in the red zone too many weeks in a row. It just sorts itself out. Now, I'm a big fan of dashboards. Those of you who heard me talk before will know how important I think these are in your businesses. You don't need to be a mechanic to drive a car. Thanks to a dashboard, you can see exactly how you're performing, and the same applies for your business. And there's so many tools out there that can help you with this. So I'd encourage you all to think about the key performance indicators that you could have in your dashboard, the information that you can have in front of you to look at either weekly or monthly. Somewhere between 5 and 10. No more than 10, they're not key then, are they, if you've got more than 10? So maximum 10, but somewhere between 5 and 10 is good. Please make sure with these that they are aligned to your strategic objectives. Don't just stick any old stuff down there just because, I don't know, I put it on the screen here that you think it's a good idea. Put stuff down that matters for you right now. And by the way, these are going to change. If your strategic objectives are based around cash flow right now, you'll have lots of cash metrics up there. If they're around profitability, likewise for profit. So think about where your objectives are and match your KPIs and your dashboard to them. And just make sure you've got enough leading indicators versus lagging indicators. So a lagging indicator is something like money in the bank. It tells you a whole heap of stuff that's already happened. It tells you all the pitches you've been for, the jobs you've won, the work you've done, the invoices you sent out, and finally the money you've been paid. It doesn't tell you anything about the future. But your pipeline will tell you about your future, your sales pipeline, and a whole heap of other stuff. Again, if you want to know some more leading indicators, come and speak to me afterwards. I'm around. And there's technology now that can help. So there's a tool. So we've been studying this for, 14 years. And we're constantly on the lookout for the latest tools. It's what led us to Xero. We're the first accountants in the UK to pick up on Xero. And we were one of the first to pick up on Futurely. Futurely links in with Xero. It's a reporting and it's a forecasting tool, and it's amazing. So I'd encourage you to check it out. It's quite complex. If you get stuck, we've got pretty much the UK's leading expert on Futurely, other than the guys at Futurely, in our office, and he can help you. So, but check it out. They will turn the numbers into something more pretty, something more palatable, something more easy to digest. These are just some of the reports you can get at a click of the fingers from Futurely. It's a really good tool. Now, just a couple of quick tips to finish on. There's loads of stuff you can measure. I just want to give you a couple of things that it's really important that you don't forget, really. I don't want you to forget this stuff. So you're going to be measuring sales, I get that. But don't just measure past performance, what you have done. It's really important to look at your pipeline, the weighted value of your pipeline. We've got these opportunities. This is the percentage chance of success. This is when we think they will coming in. Let's match that to our cash flow forecast. But also on sales, let's take it a little bit further. So I'd encourage you to think about your new business versus the business you've won from your existing clients. A lot of people forget that. There's gold amongst your existing clients. Start measuring things like your average client spend, so you can sell more stuff, or you could just sell the same amount of stuff, but for more money. And the other thing about sales I just want to share with you is agencies I think they're missing a huge trick. I think you should have a sales objective that you can affect at 3 o'clock on a Friday. Because if you just put down, I want to do 10 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is this month, you can't really do 10 grand on a Friday or 100 grand on a Friday. But you can pick up the phone and make one more phone call. You can pick up the phone and book one more meeting. You can make those things happen. And if you've got that weekly cadence of moving things forward on the sales front, you can achieve amazing things. Do you have objectives in your business that you can affect at 3 o'clock on a Friday? Because that's when the magic happens. And make them weekly as well. So my favorite story of this is two guys. They ran a 10-man agency close to our HQ in Hampshire. And do you know, they had this stuff pretty down. They had weekly objectives that they worked out that there were two things that made a big difference to their sales: number of networking events attended and number of new contacts made. And two directors had targets for each of these every single month, every single week. New contacts made, networking events attended, and they did this religiously. They had a terrible month financially. And when we looked back at the numbers, we could track it all the way back to 5 months earlier. All the way back to the point where one of the directors got married and one had their first child. Now, not a lot of networking and not a lot of new conversations happened in that month. But you know what? The sales were fine that month. If you look at the stats, sales were fine. And the month after, because it was a lagging effect. They had a 5-month pipeline. And then bang, wallop, suddenly it dropped off a cliff. Now, I promise you, they've never, since that day, missed that weekly target. It suddenly has much greater importance. What is your weekly target? What can you affect at 3 o'clock on a Friday? Now, there's loads of cash metrics, and I've done whole talks on this, so again, come and chat to me afterwards. But I encourage you to think again about some leading ones. Look at how long it takes you on average to get paid. Put systems in place to look at it weekly. People is an interesting one. Now, we often forget to put a metric for our people on our dashboard. And I think that we're missing a trick, because I'll share a little stat with you. Right now, everyone here in this room, in this year, on average, our teams, 17% of our teams will leave the business this year. 17% of the people that we hire right now are not going to be working for us at the end of this year. Fact. Okay? Now, if you're growing, combine that with that stat there, that even just to stand still, you're going to need to hire people. Combine it with the fact that it's really hard to find talent. I don't speak to any agency owner who's there going, God, I'm awash with talent. They're bashing down my door. There's so many great people. It's really tough out there. There is a war on talent. You hear it. And yet I see so many agencies forgetting about their people, forgetting to have a metric for recruitment. And so what happens is someone leaves, a project manager leaves. Panic, quick. Who was the least unpleasant recruiter I've met in the last year? Let's phone them up and then panic down the phone, agree to their terms, and they don't really understand my agency. I'm desperate, so that's never good. I'm going to hire someone just to get them in, and guess what? 3 months later, they've not worked out. conveniently just beyond their rebate period, and I spent a load of money, I'm no further forward, and it feels just a bit crap. There's a better way. And the better way is that every week you set yourself an objective, which is I'm going to interview one person this week. Just one, or two, or three. You pick your number. But at least one person every single week, even if you are not hiring for that role. Because I promise you, in the next 12 months, you will need a project manager, you will need an account manager, you will need someone technical, you will need someone in sales, you will need someone creative, you will need these people. And wouldn't it be great, is rather than panic buying, is to have a portfolio of them. Have a little spreadsheet. When you're interviewing them, say, do you know what, I've really enjoyed chatting, but you're just not quite the right level for where we need right now, not quite fit the team, but let's stay in touch. I'd love to stay in touch. And the really good ones, stay in touch. Buy them a beer every quarter. See what's happening. Yeah, Daniel.
I want to ask the same question in all the different hubs that we do these presentations in, but I'm interested in what you guys do. How many of you have monthly reminders to catch up with people that you want to hire? Hands up.
Crazy, isn't it? It's literally crazy.
So this is a really good tip, right? Like, basically have a list of people that you want to hire, just catch up with them.
It makes a massive difference. And here's the thing, not many people are doing it. So you can steal a march in your competition. Yeah.
How do you initiate that? Do you have like an open door, like contact us for careers?
Well, you can use recruiters. So you can use recruiters and just say, oh, they weren't quite right, and take their details, take their email address and their phone number. It's not... Like, guys, it's fine. So we do it well, and the recruiters know we do it, and they're fine with it, because they also know that every now and again, a gem will come along and we'll go, we can't let this person go. We've literally got to hire them. We've literally got to hire them. So, and you know, every now and again we do say to recruiters, look, we have hired that person from 2 years ago. We're not going to pay the full fee, but because we're growing and we need people, we need talent. We all need talent. We do acknowledge their contribution, and it works.
Think of it this way as well. I'm sure if you think about one person who you've come across in the last 12 months that you really wanted to hire, but you couldn't, what have you done since?
Yep. And also, as well as going to networking events like this, maybe attend networking events where the people that you would really want to hire go to. So there was someone, a developer client of ours hired this particular type of coder, and they would, in fact, they worked it out. They used to go to the event, but then they worked out that they could just use the hashtag and see all of the people that were tweeting and get all of their details and then connect with them that way. So they could just sit at home and connect with all of these people at this conference for, I don't know, Ruby on Rails coders or whatever, and they could just hoover them up, sat at home. And I think they probably even created a bot to do it now, you know. So look, it's up to you. And the lack of hands that go up show, I guess, the challenge that we have. No one here is doing it, and yet we're facing a huge challenge with our people. Really good things to measure with clients, NPS scores, Net Promoter Scores. It's an internationally recognized measure that will help you work out your level of customer satisfaction. So we use a tool called Ask Nicely at Wow. So all of the Wow clients get an email every 6 months saying, how likely is it that you'll refer us to someone else out of 10? And literally, it's one click. You hit, hopefully, 9 or a 10. But if we get a low score, that's brilliant. That's almost just as good as a bad score, because we get that instantly fed back. And then we can get on the phone and say, hey, what's going on? What's happened? And we can do something about it. I think it's a wonderful way to stay in touch with people and check how you're doing. The other thing with clients is just check how much or what percentage of revenue your largest clients represents. So we found a shocking stat amongst agencies. 27% of agencies are over-reliant on one client. And by over-reliant, I mean that client represents more than 30% of your revenue. 27% have a client that could literally bring them down in one go. So maybe it's worth tracking what your top 3 clients represent in terms of the overall level of revenue. There's lots to take in there. There's lots I've talked about, and I've seen you take notes and pictures, which is awesome. I'm now going to help you have your best year yet. So I'm going to take you through this little exercise. This requires some concentration. I want you to think really carefully about what is most important that your agency achieves this year. One thing. What is it most important that your agency achieves this year? amongst everything else, what's the most important thing? Lodge it in your head. Now, we've all heard this phrase, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Of course it is. The ability to look back on our mistakes and learn from them, the ability to then take that forward into the future. Now, I want to give you hindsight right now, and here's how I'm going to do it. I want you to imagine we come back in here in 12 months' time, but you're not very happy. And the reason you're not very happy is that thing you decided was the most important thing that your agency needed to achieve, you've failed. In fact, you've missed it by quite a considerable margin. And you feel crap. You're walking up the stairs, and you remember this talk, and you're thinking, God, do you know what? Looking back on Pete's talk, looking back on 2018, I really wish I'd ... So having failed at your number one objective and imagining how terrible that feels, imagining the disappointment, what do you really wish you'd have done? What pops into your head? Now we're going to snap out of that because that was a bit miserable, really, wasn't it? And instead, I want you to imagine we're going to come back here in 12 months' time. In fact, we're not going to come back in this time of year. We're going to come back in spring. And we're at this new venue that Daniel's talked about, and it's amazing. The sun's shining, there's a spring in your step, champagne, sparkling wine, sparkling water. Sparkling water's on tap. But you're in a good mood, you're cock-a-hoop, and you suddenly realise, you said, do you know what, that talk I went to with Pete from WOW, that thing that was most important for me to achieve, I nailed it. I absolutely nailed it. And as you're walking up the stairs, you turn to the person next to you and you say, do you know what? Looking back on 2018, I am so glad I did ... What pops into your head? So having achieved success, having achieved everything you want for your agency, and imagining how good that feels for you, what are you really, really glad that you achieved? There's your hindsight. You don't need to make those mistakes now. You know exactly what you need to do. Go ahead and make it happen. A couple of final points I just want to share with you. I'd love you to get involved in benchmarking. This isn't for my benefit. This is for your benefit. Please go to benchpress.uk.com, and by submitting your data, you'll be able to log back in later in the year and do live benchmarking, which I'm really excited about. In the report, oh, by the way, to get the full report, you need to complete this. So we go into so much more detail. I literally could have stood up for days. We talk. There's plans for AI, so agencies' plans for AI. We know how much revenue agencies are generating from AI right now, what their plans are for the next year and the next 3 years. We know the impact of Brexit, both the current and the perceived impact. And there is so much more detail on pricing and profitability. We literally have gone into more detail than ever before, and I'm really excited to share that with you for those who take part. So thank you for half the room that have. For those that haven't, please join in. Yeah.
You said when you can reveal the results of it?
So the survey is open till the end of February, and the results will be published on the 22nd of March. One final thought for you. So I've been doing this for 14 years. My personal mission is to help agencies grow. That's why I set up WOW. That's why I set up the Agency Collective. That's why I do the benchmarking. I absolutely adore it. If you're looking to supercharge your agency, there's loads of stuff we can do at WOW. You don't even need to be our accountants, or we don't need to be your accountants to do a lot of this stuff. We can help you out on a one-off basis. So there's profitability reviews, there's dashboards and forecasts, so we can help you with the Futurely stuff. Or even just a chat, you know? Even if you're thinking, do you know what, I've really enjoyed it. I just want to have a conversation just to get a bit more of WOW. There's someone who can help. So Rory, was Rory there? So I noticed last time we did that, you did a camp wave, and I took the mickey, but you were so strong with that wave. Salute. Yeah, solid. Yeah, you did learn your lesson. So Rory spends every single day working with agencies. Many of you would have chatted to him already. He knows agencies inside out. He's helped me put together a lot of these stats, and he's a really good guy to know. So if you want to have a chat with Rory, just get a bit more info on kind of like behind-the-scenes stuff, behind the stats, then please drop him an email. I just want to say thanks, guys. You know, thanks for coming along tonight. Thanks for asking such great questions. I'm around for the rest of the evening, and good luck for 2018. I sincerely hope you honestly have the most amazing year, and I'm here to help you, so thank you.